Welcome to episode 1 of our new podcast series, Bridging the Gaps, which is co-produced by Feasta, the Foundation for the Economics of Sustainability, and EHFF, the European Health Futures Forum. I'm Sean O'Conline, agus tá sólagam go mbuinfeadh sult as ar nara sra the podcréaltaí.
And I'm Caroline White. In this series, we'll be hearing from a range of guests covering diverse topics, including how best to measure well-being, the politics of land, wealth distribution, blame, shame and compassion, and the role of digital technology in society, all in the context of a biosphere which is critically ill and in need of urgent care.
We're starting off the series with some reflections and suggestions that we're hoping will provide a bit of grounding for the future episodes.
This is a bumper episode, and it's been adapted from recordings made at a recent event hosted by Feasta in Dublin, entitled Living Well in the Face of Climate and Ecological Crises. The event explored how people who are involved in trying to improve our situation at this very fraught time in human history can best preserve their own mental health and avoid burning out and inadvertently undermining the very things they're trying to achieve.
First, we'll be hearing from psychologist and Feasta trustee John Sharry. He'll be interviewing our Feasta administrator, Morag Friel, and Morag's daughter, Leontien Friel Darrell, who is very active in the Extinction Rebellion movement.
Then later on, we'll hear from Mark Garavan, also a Feasta trustee and a lecturer in sociology. He'll be interviewing Theresa O'Donohue, who is very active in numerous environmental and social causes and is currently the People Before Profit candidate for Clare in the coming general election in Ireland, and journalist and climate campaigner John Gibbons. So here's John Sharry starting the conversation off.
Welcome to everybody to this morning, where we are trying to offer a slightly different type of conversation about some of all the issues we're facing. My background is in mental health. That's what I've been doing for my whole life. And mental health is about helping people to live well in the face of whatever difficulties they're in. And I've always worked with people in very adverse circumstances for a whole variety of things, whether there's family difficulties or breakdown or mental health difficulties. And always my focus has been people to live the best way they can, whatever the circumstances they're living in. Much mental illness is caused by a lack of acceptance of reality. In fact, there's a great quote by the psychologist, had his own mental health problems, I might add. You might have seen him on The Late Late Show, Ronnie Lang. He was drunk on The Late Late Show, which is a very famous thing to do, isn't it? And Gay Byrne was not happy about it. But he had a great quote. He says, "The only pain we can avoid in life is the pain caused trying to avoid pain." You have to accept the reality of your circumstances. That's the importance of positive mental health. And the focus of this conversation is how do we live well in the face of the reality, the very difficult reality of ecological and environmental crisis that we're facing into, collapsing ecosystems and all the challenges for society. As you can see, lots of people are flying into unreality and electing unreal fantasy politicians who give unreal explanations for the problems we're facing. The aim of Feasta as an organisation has been to identify what the characteristics of a truly sustainable society are, whether this is economic, cultural or environmental factors. And they take a holistic view, looking at the whole society, the whole of communities. And probably the most important unit of society is the individual. And the question today for me is what sustains an individual? What's a sustainable life for an individual in their families and in their communities? So a big question for me as a mental health professional, as a psychologist, is what truly are the characteristics of an individual who can thrive and live well in the face of all the crises we're facing? So that's the important question, because I guess you probably all, for those of you working, and most of you are all from the environmental movement, and here we don't have any people from Fine Gael here, I imagine. Should mention a few others, shouldn't I? I shouldn't single them out. But anyway, the mainstream, if you like. So if you're in the environmental movement or and looking at these from a different perspective, this does take its toll on your own mental health, which is often not talked about. I see this all the time. They might go with great passion when they first discover the reality of what's happening, and they go in a great drive, we're going to change everything. And then they usually hit a brick wall where things don't change and they suffer burnout and they might fall into despair and so forth. And they're very normal sets of emotions to occur. So it's just to acknowledge that we need to attend and support people who are experiencing those ups and downs. Because above all, what happens when that occurs to people, they often pull back or give up or become demotivated. And what we need most of all in these circumstances, people to stay motivated, to stay passionately involved, to stay in as activists in the fight, so to speak, for a better world. So partly where I want to help people is to help people to understand what they're going through and help them be sustained in whatever they're doing and to be supported in there. So that's my passion, try to help people with. And the other challenge, I think, in the environmental movement, which I think is more of a tragedy, is quite often when there's stresses, what they tend to do, each organisation who are campaigning for a better world, is they stop fighting for a better world and they start fighting each other. Have you noticed that? They start to fall apart. They start criticising each other. So to be one of them, they think, I have the perfect message. You have to be completely vegan or you're a complete hypocrite. Or you have to be completely out campaigning and give up flying forever or you're a complete hypocrite. So there's this fracture that occurs when actually the reality is everything is needed. At all levels, all change. Everyone needs to be supported in what they do in this challenge. So another passion of mine is try to help people hold together. Don't fight your own guy who's on your side. There's plenty of people out there who need your attention and need your vitriol and need your resistance, if you like, too. So often I would like to help organizations learn to support one another and learn to stay together and hold together. So they're the two main questions that, for me personally, that would motivate me to be involved in setting up an event like this today. And I'm delighted today that we have, the way we try to approach it, there are no answers to this, but we're to give space and to listen to some people who've been involved in the environmental movement for some time and looking at how they have managed that and from a personal and community and family perspective. So we're delighted to have a number of great people here. The first thing we're going to start with is we're going to have an interview with Morag Friel and Leontien Friel Darrell. And so I'll invite Morag and Leontien to join me on the stage. What I'm going to do is just start by inviting, if I just address my two interviewees, like I think what's really interesting to have you both here today and what really struck me as very interesting is that you're from the same family, a mother and daughter, and certainly as a parent myself, how do I bring up my own children in the face of what we're dealing with in the future? And how do I talk to them about this and how to prepare them for this? And so I think that's a very important question, a lot of us when we're in families. And I'd be interested to start with you, Leontien, and if you could tell me a little bit for you, because I know your mum and dad were very much involved in the environmental movement and the eco-village. But what was that like for you growing up as a child? If we could take you back to the beginning, so to speak.
I think I was a bit of a protest baby. I feel like I was brought to quite a few when I was younger, and one of my earliest memories is actually at a Feasta conference back in, I don't even know which conference it was. I just remember helping with the name tags as a child. But it was very much like climate change is a word that I've known for a very, very long time. Like it's always been there: peak oil, climate change, carbon, fossil fuels, food security, which is my dad's main focus, has always been very, very, like the language that has always been around, but I don't think I ever got it. It was always very much my parents' thing. And, you know, being involved in Feasta, I think there was definitely that boundary of I was a child and I couldn't get into the intellectual side of climate breakdown because I had no idea what was going on. And so I think, you know, living in eco-village and living with parents who were very involved in Feasta, there was that almost inaccessibility to it of not being able to be like, very, very involved because I just didn't understand the intellectual side of climate change.
So as a child, it was there, but you still had a childhood.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like this all-consuming thing. Like I knew it was, but I was very much like, I guess I grew up with the very like we have to recycle and don't use plastic and flying is bad, but we do it anyway sometimes. And Canada's. Yeah, anyway.
There's the sort of inconsistencies people
absolutely.
struggle in their life about well, flying's bad, but we do it sometimes.
And it was very much like, okay, we try to reduce our waste, we try to recycle, we compost, we try and eat local food, we try and buy food that doesn't have plastic on it. But those were the things that I thought like were saving us. Like I was still in that headspace of like we're doing the right thing. Yeah, and then growing up in eco-village, I was surrounded by people who were all very much in that same headspace. But again, it was that, like, I was still a child and I didn't fully understand, which I think is probably a good thing overall.
Thanks. I'm going to bring in your mum, Morag. If you want to, I'd be interested to hear your own experience of being an environmental activist and then becoming a parent. And I know you made a very conscious decision around that in thinking all that through and probably way ahead of a lot of people in there.
I've been involved, I suppose, in environmentalist light, if you like, for a very, very long time. By light, I mean, I didn't sort of become aware of Feasta's, thinking till 2007 when I started working for Feasta. But before that, I, like Leontien, as an adult, I had these ideas. Like I was involved with a group trying to set up a co-housing community in Dublin. I was involved with the Dublin Food Co-op. Bruce and I started an organisation called Dublin Food Growing, which was aiming at getting, at food security for people in the cities. So, I was conscious and active, but still either denying or not fully aware of the implications of what was coming. But even I remember, Bruce and I lived in Canada, he's Canadian, and we got married, and we were married in Canada. We were 7 years married before Leontien was born. And for a long time, I had thought that we wouldn't have children. I knew overpopulation was a big issue for me, or for us in that decision, and consumption. And so for a long time, we didn't have a child. And then, like I said, so many humans, the heart wins out in the end, or the biological imperative snuck up on me. And in my mid-30s, I failed to hold the line, and I said, Bruce, the way, and we talked it through, and like everything we do, we talk and think a lot, and then we talk again, then we think again, and then we talk again, and in the end,
sounds like a Feasta meeting.
It sounds like life as Feasta meeting. Oh dear.
Welcome to the Friel Darrell household.
Yeah, there's a lot of thinking and talking, but it was a conscious decision then to go, oh, well, our personal, my personal needs and desires trump the world, sorry. And for the same reason, I still fly back to Canada on a yearly basis, because our family is there, and it's a heart thing again. And to not see our family in Canada most of the year is heartbreaking sometimes. And so, so I'm not attempting to justify myself, but that is as it is. So Leontien came into our life, and so changed, as Naomi Klein said, that changed everything. And so there was a whole other aspect then to our, I suppose, the imperative to work to try and help to deal with the climate and environmental crises.
Can you say a little bit more about how that becoming a parent changed everything, particularly in your work as an activist and awareness of environmental issues?
Well, it brings the political to the personal, because I think there's that thing where you have the cognitive dissonance or whatever it is that compartmentalizes issues in your life. And so I think when you have a child, you're suddenly looking at this other human being, and you're saying, oh my God, that's the most beautiful baby there ever was born, and the cleverest. But you do see now, you're thinking more generations ahead. You're thinking, oh, what kind of world am I going to leave this little being? And that made it became, I suppose I panicked more. But even then, it was still very much in my head. It's far in the future. We're working hard to avoid it. Feasta soon taught me that hope was for fools, and being a tremendously doomer organisation. Not everyone in Feasta is a doomer, but a lot of us are. And those two things, I hold them equally. I have no hope for the future, but yet I have to try. I have to do my best and support this person and do the work I do, because it's the right thing to do, and it is the only thing to do. Because what else is there to lie down in a heap? And I'm just not going to do that. I'm a bit of a fighter.
Tell me a little bit about that. Balance is a very key one, isn't it? About a balance of, you could fall into despair, but then you've hope, and you're committed to the people around you. You've got your children, your family, your community, and not even just to mention yourself, that you want to live for.
It's a very tenuous line sometimes. And I fall into despair. I have actually suffered from depression all my life. So I'm used to it. So in a way, this is nothing new. So it's actually kind of helpful. I just get up every morning and I put one foot in front of the other and I keep doing the thing. And I just have a fair bit of humour, a lot of dark humour, but I am a fighter. And I think I try and have integrity in as much as I can, and to say I'm not going to abandon everybody, myself, my family, my wider community, the larger community. I'm not going to abandon them. So just keep on keeping on.
Great. And can you tell me a little bit about the eco-village, how that's benefit both of you, or both your experience of that? Maybe we start with Leontien about that.
Yeah, like I said, it's very much living a sustainable life has just kind of been my life. Like, I rebelled in my teenage years by going to pennies.
Okay.
Heartbroken.
I got in a lot of trouble for coming home with clothes from pennies. A lot of disappointment. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed for you for going to pennies. Yeah, that was kind of my rebellion. It was
that's not too bad a rebellion compared to the ones
I was a very tame teenager.
You didn't see what you came back with.
Yeah, but it was very much like I rebelled from this life that I had of sustainability, of climate consciousness, of environmentally conscious life, by going towards the mainstreaming, wanting to just be a normal teenager for once. And then I realized that that's boring and I didn't want to do that anymore. But yeah, so growing in the eco-village, like, I have a huge support network. Like, I've grown up with people, and now that I'm much more conscious of the issues we're facing, I already have this huge network of people who get it. Like
Right.
I live surrounded by people who understand
Okay.
exactly what I'm going through.
And what's that like, to live surrounded by people who understand?
It's one of the best parts of my life in this way, is having that support in the community. This community is, we very much went with the it takes a village to raise a child. I was very much raised by so many people in the village.
Okay.
They've had so many influences on my life through like teaching me Irish and through just kind of like having friendships with all these adults in my life who supported me through my teenage years and through learning about all of this stuff.
Right.
It's not having to explain and justify how I feel constantly. Having people just get it automatically and understand where I'm at has been so beneficial.
Great. And can you just say, Morag, about what it was like for you as a parent and a family raising Leontien in the eco-village?
As Angie said, it was a conscious decision because we knew there would only be one child. That was very clear once Leontien was born. I thought, well, when you hit perfection, why go again? Right? That was my motto, in a sarcastic tone. But it was so there was a conscious decision to move to an intentional community for the very reason that there would be a lot of influence and a lot of sociability and the understanding. And so I think for Leontien, the hard thing was actually in the eco-village for her was there weren't many people of her age like that she connected with, and children of her age. So I did feel slightly guilty about that because there was a lot of adult influence, but maybe not so many. Whereas now there are a lot of kids in the eco-village, but of her age bracket there wasn't. So that was a little hard. But yeah, so like that, it was just to be with people, and I won't say like-minded because, as we all know, once we're in a community together, there's lots of different opinions. But it was, as Leontien said, people who got it, the baseline. We were at least at a base together, and people supported. Like, we don't have a car, and living in a rural area, that was a conscious decision to balance the once a year flying. And so we needed the support of people physically, like in that way. And there's huge support within our community for everything, like, social, but physical. It's a really sharing, caring community.
I'm just going to change direction a little bit and talk a little bit about, because Leontien, you're also a young activist, or being raised in the eco-village and then rebelling by going to pennies. Then you made a decision to get more involved in a very direct way. Can you tell a bit about your journey to become a young activist?
Yeah, well, it really started with the abortion rights campaign with Repeal. So I was in rural Ireland, rural Tipperary, very much an interesting place to canvass about abortion. So it was a very in the deep end start. So I got involved with Together for Yes in Tipperary. I was originally like, I'm just gonna be like social media. I'll do behind the scenes. I'll support people. And then I went for one canvass and then canvassed every single day until the referendum. Like I suddenly was like, oh, this is something I'm actually good at. This is something I enjoy. It sparked a real kind of fire of just like, I want to make change. I want to see change happen. And this is how I can do it. And I realized that I was actually influencing people and having these conversations. There was this feeling of empowerment of like, I'm actually changing minds. And so when we won the Repeal campaign, which was the most incredible feeling, I think I cried for like 3 days straight. I was suddenly, after I recovered from a bit of the burnout, there was this kind of gap in my life of, well, what do I do now? Like, what can I change now? Like, I need to be doing things. I need to be saving the world in some way. So I went to Canada for a few months just to do some traveling, and then I came home and I was going to go to Toronto. That was my idea. I was going to move to Toronto. I was going to start afresh. I was going to be this new person. And then I found Extinction Rebellion and everything changed.
Okay. So tell me how everything changed being involved in Extinction Rebellion.
Well, so one of my neighbours in the eco-village is one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion Ireland. And he gave a talk called Heading for Extinction and What to Do About It. So it's basically just the science laid out in front of you, how screwed we really are. Like just really just brutally honest science for about an hour. And then about another hour of, this is what you can do. This is civil disobedience. This is direct action. This is activism. This is why we do what we do. This is the history of science and the data behind what we're doing. And I just realized that there was this turning point where I was just sitting in the audience and I was crying. Like I was so overwhelmed by this grief and fear. And I actually went to talk with my dad, and I kind of turned to him and he just goes, now you understand how I've been feeling for the last 10 years. Now you get how I feel every day. And so there was that realization that at least I don't have to persuade my parents to join me in this.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm just sitting there and my parents are finally glad that I've caught up. But yeah, so it was very much this turning point of like, oh my God, I have to do something. And this is what I need to do. This is what I need to be doing with my life. And so I decided to stay in Ireland and I got really, really involved in Extinction Rebellion. And that's been my entire year pretty much.
And that's a big task to take on because like you had as you said, it was a very empowering experience with the repeal and changing minds. But this is a much bigger, harder task in Extinction. How's that going? Because as you say, you talked about the whole process of fighting and burnout? How do you...
Well, for repeal, there was a deadline. That was the big difference, is that there was the referendum on a certain date, working towards that date. I knew I just had to get to that day. So it was very much a all out, just to get to that day. And then afterwards I recovered. This is there is no deadline there is lots of deadlines, but I'm trying not to think about them too much. But there is this there is no one day where we're going to vote on a thing and it's going to save the world. It's going to be just one thing after the other that we have to keep on going. And I will admit that balance is not a skill that I've mastered yet. It's I just work really hard and then I burn out, and then I work really hard and then I burn out, and it's just I haven't.
So you have this high energy, burnout, recover, and then get back in again.
And lots of small burnout. So I'm living part-time in Dublin, part-time with my parents still in Clough-Jordan, and I come home and I just completely collapse. I'm half the time I come home and I'm just in bed for 2 days, just trying to recover from the rest of the week. There's the two extremes, and there is that fine line of hope and despair and trying to find that balance. It's all...
How do you pick yourself up again?
That's a very good question. I think it's just, I don't feel like I have a choice in not continuing. Like Mum was saying, I feel like I almost owe it to the people around me. I'm not going to give up in any way. And the fight is still so relevant? Sorry.
So important or so out there,
yeah. And I'm also incredibly inspired by the people around me. Working with Extinction Rebellion, there is a huge focus on looking after the people around you, and I wouldn't have gotten through this year without all the people in XR.
So they have awareness of the importance of looking after people.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Which is great, isn't it? See some of them here.
Yeah. And that is integral to this fight, is that it's a long fight. This is not a race, it's a marathon, and it's a very, very long marathon, and we're going to keep having to keep going for as long as we possibly can. And I think we all need to improve that skill of balance. It is a skill that we all need to get better at practicing, because otherwise we're not going to make it. We're not going to continue this fight long enough.
And can I bring you in there, Morag, as a parent of a young adult, trying to support them in this, and what's that been like for you?
It has a whole other dimension, for sure, as I said earlier, about changing everything, because, inside myself, I struggle, and I've been struggling with this for a long time. And now there's this, I remember a quote I read somewhere, when you have a child, it's to wear your heart outside your body for the rest of your life. So when I see Leontien struggling and suffering, there's a huge myriad of emotions, among which is guilt, that we have created a world that this for young people, and also, fear, also love, and the need to support, and then the helicopter lawnmower mammy who wants to rush ahead and clear everything out of the way and make sure it's all okay. And that's very strong. The force is strong in this one. And so I have to, so there's obviously, that's a parenting issue.
You almost want to protect, is it?
Well, I'd like to take that, I'll take it on, you be better, feel better. So, I'd rather carry it, which is very selfish.
There's often this thing of you trying to remove all the obstacles I could possibly face before I have to face them.
Yeah.
And so it's gotten to the point where I've started sending her helicopter emojis when she
starts
doing that.
No.
Okay.
I'm on
a warning, you're doing it again. You can calm down.
I'm still on the parenting journey here, the trying to stop being a parent and being something else, but it is hard. But particularly in this case, it's not normal. It's not normal that Leontien should be, going and doing all the XR stuff with her colleagues, and then, working herself, and then coming home and having this awful letdown and collapse and exhaustion, that's not right,
You say it's not normal. You'd prefer that it was a different world.
That's what I mean. Sorry, it's not normal. But this is the new normal. Sorry, it is normal now, but it shouldn't be normal. And so for me, there's this element of so I kind of steel myself. Leontien comes home. There's inevitable sort of day or two, and then I kind of steel myself, and then. What's really good is with Bruce, her dad, we're very good at, as a family, we operate pretty well together. We call ourselves a BML collective, and we do kind of sit down, spend a lot of time together on the couch, talking things through at the dinner table, and allowing each other to say what we need to say, and Leontien to feel as she feels, and yet offer maybe the perspective of our lifetime of activity that says this is normal, the infighting problems that arise, the fact that you're not making the progress you thought you would. Hopefully this action would have led to better legislation, and it's not happening, and that's all that is all natural, unfortunately, and so you do have to, as she said, it's a marathon, not a race. So it's a kind of like a regen. We do, there's a regen at home together.
Yeah, they're absolutely, like you were asking earlier, I get through because I come home and I do collapse, but I collapsed in a I guess a more healthy way of actually just venting and actually talking about why I'm feeling so down in that moment, and having a space where that's okay to talk about. And the people I'm talking about it with, my parents, have been going through this exact same thing for 10 years, and so they know how hard it is to keep going, and so they understand that they've just created the space for me that it is very much, I come home and I'm able to just be down and be upset about all the things I'm facing, and it's okay to just.
So that understanding is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Leontien, as well, like what other advice would you give parents who are like your mum and like all the other parents here, wondering how to help children and young people that they know, or their own children, to manage with the crises we're facing? And
I guess to educate yourself, to understand exactly why your child is so scared and so upset and so depressed and so grief-stricken, like to understand where they're at.
So educate yourself about the issues.
Exactly, educate yourself about
usually,
the science, so that
usually
you know.
Parents, most parents, your parents are unusual, are quite behind on that, aren't they, in terms of their understanding of the science?
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
problems.
And I every now and again I just register how privileged I am to have that space of the adults in my life are able to still be the grown-ups in my life, and I don't feel like I have to educate them, and it's a journey together, and we're facing this together, rather than me desperately trying to get the people who are supposed to be, I guess, still looking after me in some ways as my parents, to understand something and trying to educate them. There is like this mutual kind of understanding, and that is a huge privilege that I have over so many people. But I guess, yeah, best advice would be to educate yourself so you can really understand the situation, understand why people are feeling this way, so you can really come at it with empathy. And then also just to create a space where it's okay to be not okay. We are in a really awful situation. It's very terrifying, and you can't expect to be positive all the time. There is going to be the negatives. And like, my parents have created this space for me where it's okay to be just so depressed and so sad and scared. And the fact that I don't have to fight through it and I'm able to just let those emotions happen is
because
been the most
parents will want
beneficial.
to fix that,
Exactly.
To stop that, because it's often very distressing for them to see the children in that. But you think it's important to allow that
Absolutely.
in a supportive way to happen.
So just allow that space for what needs to happen.
Anything else other message now that you have the audience of all the parents of the world? What else would you think they should know? Because they often ask me how they should respond to some of these things. What else would you've made some very good points about inform themselves, be very supportive and understanding.
Join your kids on the streets.
So join them.
Don't expect us to do all the work.
Exactly.
We're like, no offense, but your generation fucked this up for us.
No offense taken.
We didn't cause this.
Well brought up young lady.
Those guys, they did it, didn't they?
It's great that you're like young people that we're trying to be. People have said the work that all of us doing is inspiring, and that's great. But take that inspiration and do the work too. Don't leave it all on our shoulders to fix the world that you created.
Great. Well, thank you very much. On that note, I'm going to take a little pause. Thank you so much for sharing. Would you give me a little round of applause? Would that be all right?
That was John Sharry interviewing Morag Friel of Feasta and Leontien Friel Darrell of Extinction Rebellion during the December the 7th event, Living Well in the Face of Climate and Ecological Crises. Next, we're going to hear from Mark Garavan, who'll be asking Theresa O'Donohue and John Gibbons for their perspectives on taking care of one's mental health while you're at the front line of environmental activism.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I think we just slipped into the afternoon. Mark Garavan is my name. I'm one of the Feasta trustees, and I've been involved in Feasta for quite a while as well. I'm going to cut to the chase because I think we can just get straight to it and use our half hour as efficiently as possible. Do you want to say 2 sentences about each other just to orientate who you are?
My name is Theresa O'Donohue. I grew up in Dublin. I now live in Clare. I have 5 kids, and I have been aware of the predicament for the last 12 years and acting ever since.
John Gibbons. I grew up in Kilkenny. I've lived in Dublin, I guess, all my adult life. I'm a journalist by background. I've been a business owner for the last 20-something years, and was high on the hog until all this stuff sent me crashing down again. So I spent the last number of years involved kind of back in journalism and a little bit of activism as well, trying to fumble my way through it, like I think everybody else in this room.
You're beautifully colour coordinated as well.
Thank you for noticing.
I think we should note that. It's very, very important. So I think we listened, the first conversation was really interesting and a lot of interesting stuff came up. So you guys have a lot of combined experience together. So maybe we'll just tap straight into it. I'm just wondering, firstly, your motivation. What actually keeps you going in the middle of all of this, if that's not too negative a question? But just it's interesting for people to hear your own motivations at this point.
Well, mine would be the kids and the fact that I have 5 kids and we're leaving this planet to them. And that keeps me motivated. I think once you understand what's going on, you have to be motivated to keep going. Otherwise, inaction is not an option. So I think I'm motivated with that.
I feel like an imposter, first of all. I'm not a proper environmentalist. I never was, probably never will be. If you'd said to me 15, 16 years ago that I'd be sitting here this morning in this room for this type of a group, I would have thought you were crazy. And I'd have also thought people who do this kind of thing were crazy. So that's been a bit of a revelation. So I think, like Theresa, I guess I have a stake in the future. I've got 2 teenage kids now and, trying to grapple with the kind of world that we're all going to get stuck with, and specifically the next generation. And what do you do about that? How do you live in some way? How do you reconcile what you know with your own values in any shape or form? And I think we all do it to a lesser or greater extent quite badly. And I think I certainly do. I kind of feel, this great disconnect between what I know and how I live and so on. But I think that's probably, I don't think I'm alone in that.
So just to pursue that, when you think of the future and the future through the eyes of your children, that's a dark place as you see it, is it? You see that as quite negative?
Hell yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll say I stumbled into this about 16 years ago, around about the time my first child was born. And I guess it was the first time I really thought in terms of, looking forward 30, 40 years. And when you pay attention, it's just, oh my God, right? So I've been in a state of kind of shock ever since, really, to be honest. And then personally, that shock I mediated into anger, I think, initially. And then used journalism as a sort of a blunt instrument with which to beat all the people that I was angry towards, all the institutions, all the failures in society. So I really used the media or my media platform to just kind of rage against the dying of the light. And I think you can only do that for so long. And I kind of totally burned out on that for 2 or 3 years, maybe a little bit more. And then that's kind of brings me back 8 to 10 years ago. Then you have to find an equilibrium. Because if I hadn't found an equilibrium at that time, I wouldn't be here today. I'm pretty sure about that. So you have to find a way to pace yourself, to actually just go at it in a way that you can continue to function, continue to actually get out of it. That's the challenge, I think, for any of us who've kind of got our heads around this.
Okay, I think we'll come back to that in a moment, how you did that, because I think that'll be interesting for people, how you find that equilibrium. But Theresa, same question. I mean, when you see the future through the eyes of your children, is it a very dark, forbidding kind of prospect that you see?
I mean, I got involved with the Transition Towns movement because I liked the vision that we could change things and we could build more local economies and more supports for the future. So I was all delighted with the whole idea of revisioning the future and my children being involved in that vision. I can say that I've done my best since to prepare them for a life with less, whereas my first 2 children would have had holidays a couple of times a year, and I would be like you. I wouldn't have seen myself here, and I wouldn't be classified as an environmentalist, but I am now. So preparing them for a life that is not what they were brought up with initially, and now what their friends are being brought up with, and I don't believe in them buying into a situation that can't be maintained for life. And I don't want them to think that they can get on like that. I want them to realise that life is not simple and not easy. That said, I don't burden them with a lot about climate change. I just want them to be resilient to what's going to happen or what is happening as it is. I mean, the Fridays for Future now has brought it into their faces, which to me, I went from being very positive and transitioning, and this was brilliant, to very angry that it's the children that are now standing up, and that we've got to a stage where we failed with the transition stuff and getting everybody on board and the cultural shift didn't happen. And now it's got to such a terrible situation that it's our children who are actually. So I was very annoyed, and I'm still pretty angry. I was fighting with someone today on social media because I took the stance of I'm not going to fight with deniers. And now it's at a critical stage where the deniers are the ones that are being most vocal. Well, they are in rural Ireland. I find it a lot different to urban Ireland. It's a lot easier to seem to be in denial.
It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier to be in denial, which to me makes me kind of angry. But my kids hopefully will have a certain amount of resilience because I've been aware of what's going on.
And how do you sustain all of that? I mean, you personally, because that's a lot of heavy stuff that you just mentioned there. I mean, how do you manage yourself personally through all of that?
I don't. I don't know what you mean. By manage, I hear all this all the time. Look after yourself. I have 5 kids. There is no looking after yourself. And when you're in this situation, you're living day to day, and you're also trying to raise awareness. You're trying not to burden your kids. There's not an awful lot of room for the fun that people talk about and how look after yourself business. I wish there was, but it's just a case of crash and burn, get up and do it again. But I don't actually crash and burn too much. And it's actually in the past year that's happened because of Fridays for Future movement. I've been pretty positive up to then, but now it's kind of like, I'm not too happy with what's going on and I wish it was moving a bit quicker.
Okay. John, you said you had maybe equilibrium, or you worked your way through burnout. How did you do that?
Probably by realizing that, if I kept going at the way I was going at it and the mindset that I was, that I'd have lost my family, for example, right? And these are things that you kind of need, right, to put it mildly. If you can't mind yourself, you can't save anybody else. That's the kind of view that I came to understand. And also, I suppose we all have to forgive ourselves for, what a shit job we're doing, myself included. I was this naive fool who thought if I could just explain things to people, things would change. And, tried that for a while and nothing changed. Well, that's not true. Things got worse. And, you have to reconcile your own failure. And we live in an era of failure. So everything we do is just at what pace we're failing. So, I suppose I was brought up to aim to be successful. The things that I understood as a kid or as a young adult were important, building a business, building a career, making money, going on holidays. They all turned out to be, I suppose, a chimera. And that's a kick in the teeth. It really is, because that's how I was brought up. And then you wake up someday and you realize that all that counts for next to nothing. So I guess it's not quite answering your question, but I think it's about pacing yourself, about knowing that everything I do has been inadequate and could have been done better, but forgiving yourself for your own failures. And even forgiving some of the people that I've been rowing with down the years, and realizing the kind of paradigms that they're locked in as well, where you realize they're seeing the world through a particular lens, and I can be furious about this, or I can be a little more, I suppose, stoic about it. And I'm kind of moving from fury to stoicism in my life, and reconciling to reality. It doesn't mean I won't kick and scream and shout. I reserve the right to continue to be a pain in the ass for the foreseeable future.
And you're succeeding, Joe.
Thank you, Barry. Never let you down. But at the same time, you've got to, at some point, make peace with yourself, and even make peace with this shitty world and what we've done. Because we're going to have to forgive ourselves, because I think a lot of my feelings have been rage, absolute rage. And I'm not sure, I just coming around to thinking, well, we are, to use the politician's line, we are where we are, and where do we go from here? The future isn't set completely, but just mostly.
Theresa, your reaction to that?
I was
a slightly
thinking
different tone of...
Well, what I was thinking while after I spoke, about, I think the way I keep going is through activism. If it wasn't for me being able to do activism, I don't know how I would cope with it. So I think that is probably, people say about working and having fun. To me, the activism is what I do in my spare time, and I'm happy with that. It'd be different if I wasn't happy with it, but I agree with John. We need to accept the world the way it is. It's a system, and I'm a systems analyst. So it's a system we've evolved in. It's not going to change overnight. What's most frustrating for me is I used to be a civil servant, so I know the inside of the system that governs, and I find that very difficult to portray that to other people, that this is not going to change quick enough unless you really, really force the change as people, because the system doesn't really change in government. I've watched it. I have no confidence unless we are on the streets and Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future forcing the change. I don't agree that the government or the civil service will change.
Yeah, we're at the nub, if you like, of the theme, I think, and of the conversation now. It would be interesting to throw this open to people, because I think what you're both articulating is what it's like to live personally in a time of systemic breakdown, how people personally get through that time. So the hope horizon is it's a transition to a new system which reboots ultimately, or the negative is the system just crashes and that's it. There's a very bleak prospect for quite some time. Either is a possibility. But one last question, just your connection with other people. I mean, you're living in rural Ireland, Theresa, so are you an oddball? I mean, what's that network?
She is.
Whoa!
Yeah, but have you people around you? Are they listening to you? Are they more open? Do you detect a change even in the last 5 years? I mean, what's your sense of the mood overall?
Very hard to get change in rural Ireland. The Extinction Rebellion has helped. I am so jealous of Leo and having the support network at home, because I don't have that support network at home. I don't even have it in my community as such. Like, it's maybe 10 kilometres away. There's someone actually maybe 5 kilometres away, but like, we're all busy in our own lives. So I used to have a much better support network in Portlaoise, in Laois, where we were closer in proximity. But it's very isolating in Clare to be a climate activist, very much so. And I am jealous of people who do have the support system. I'd love, if everybody wants to move to Lisdon Farna, be delighted.
You're offering free houses. Is Dublin any different, or what do you think? Do you have a better network?
Well, I'm out and about as well, so I kind of give talks and things here and there, and it's really interesting because it's sort of like I can take all my pain, all my anxiety, all my angst, wrap it up into a ball and give it to you. And it's so weird. I feel so much better. I see the room, kind of the faces graying around me, and they feeling worse and I'm feeling better. It's like an energy transfer of all my negative energy, and everybody goes out feeling worse and I leave feeling better. It's so weird. I'm actually not kidding. I come out of these talks feeling high as a kite, and everyone around me is going, oh, that's right. Oh, Shepherd, don't be so, cheer up for God's sakes. So this is weird. I'm probably a sick puppy. I accept that, right? But it is, for me, it is cathartic to talk to people, to meet people. And as I said, I'm not just in the Dublin bubble. Yeah. I'm out and about talking to people. And this year, for the first time probably in a decade, I've opened up even a scintilla, a crumb of, sorry, I can almost say it, the H word, a little bit of hope. Because I think the school strike movement has been inspiring. Extinction Rebellion has been wonderful. And people are reacting in a way that I've never seen before. Now, is it commensurate with where we're going? No. But is it infinitely better than every other year that I've been involved in this shit show? Yes. So I choose to take some hope from 2019 has been the best year in all the years that I've been involved in this, and I hope 2020 will be better.
That was journalist and climate campaigner John Gibbons being interviewed by Mark Garavan, a Feasta trustee and sociology lecturer, along with Theresa O'Donohue, an environmental activist who's currently running for election in Clare with the People Before Profit Party. The interview took place during the recent Feasta seminar on living well in the face of climate and ecological crises.
A theme which was mentioned several times in the event was the need to help our children prepare for a very different kind of society. A society which can no longer base itself on continually increasing consumption. In our next podcast, we'll be exploring the idea of living well, a good life, but within our planetary means. The idea that enough is plenty, or as we might say in Irish, is leor go leor.
Very many thanks to John Sharry, Morag Friel, Leontien Friel Darrell, Mark Garavan, John Gibbons and Theresa O'Donohue for a very stimulating and candid discussion. Special thanks to Owen Campbell for doing the recording at the event. Thanks also to David Somak of the European Health Futures Forum for his support and advice, and to Leisha Kelly for her music on the harp. you.